that whatever I see is smiling at me. Love is who I am.
So hello there everyone, and happy 12/12. Today we celebrate another beautiful gateway of light, and as you know, the number 12, and being multiplied of course, represents the culmination of a journey, the hero's journey, the synthesis of our year, which is now really coming to a point of the apex. And this culmination is bringing us much deeper into who we are. And so today's message will be more of a spirit transmission. So we're going to do something different today. And this came out specifically as spirit guidance, a calling, a deep inner knowing and insight, because the times we live now are so intense. And you know, spirit has been sharing of these times in terms of the great overwhelm, and I've shared with you about the recent or the latest challenging situations that have been arising around the planet, and how spirit has been calling this, you know, the great overwhelm, and the channeled spirit guidance I did as a message, and I shared it on my page, and you can get that. But today spirit wanted me to share something different, which would be beyond the usual words of guidance, words of wisdom and illumination. It would be more of an energetic transmission. So before I begin, I want to share something about myself that I hardly ever talk about. This is in the nature of my own personal domain, my private space. And it concerns my mission as a creation pillar and a giver of life, which is the essence of my spirit form. So my earthly form somehow as well, of course, corresponds to that, as we all deeply align with our spirit presence in a way that is so unique to us. And so for the past year, I've been going through many challenging situations, which were also deeply activating for the emergence of the new self, which for us, it's never new, but it's a deeper layer of who we are in terms of spirit truth, a spirit reality being brought forth here. So this gift, this offering that I'm stepping into quite intensely as of late, concerns a deeper state of presence and awareness, a larger capacity of what I'm able to share as a deeper transmission of light beyond just the words of awakening that I share with you, the words of the guidance or wisdom, how to move on the path of spiritual and of course physical ascension. But this for me as well is a deep state that I enter into when I have these profound insights and when I simply tune into the pure presence of spirit. So the message I've shared with you about the great overwhelm and the creation of our sacred space that I've recently channeled is one of such streams of light, that it's the way how I uniquely channel spirit. It's also how people who have now sessions with me in a more personal way get to feel and experience. It's a deeper language of our inner knowing that is so simple. It's so simplified in a way, but yet it's also profound in the way that it intensely and yet so quickly aligns us with our core, the deep essence that we are. So spirit has been inviting me to create this deeper essence, to share a little more about what in terms of the physical expression that is for me personally, and then create a sacred space of invitation. So in my life, I had to go through many initiations, and if I look back into my journey of spiritual awakening at first, how it all began was, I believe that years 2008 to 2010 were what my awakening years. What followed after, and I was shown a timeline between especially 2011 and 2016 were my it's almost like my initiation years. And then I've entered a phase which is called the life force mastery, and this is when I also started to talk about life force mastery, the tantric cultivation path, and how the ability to channel higher states of light within us, a higher channeled life force quotient of light that builds up within our physical body form, that then is able to illuminate our form, this aligned with my own personal experience. And I've shared many ways, through my modalities, the way Spirit teaches me. So those that Spirit calls the illumined ones, we're the ones who are taught by life. We're taught by Spirit. We're not taught through books or external teachings. It's because we're teachers of light itself. We're teachers of life force. It's the life force that always moves towards the highest potential of expression, that moves us, and it moves us in everything that we do and create. But I want to share also personal experience, how for me I've started to notice this trend that when I've entered this journey of life force mastery, things begin to pop up for me that were not random in terms of what I was able to witness happening in the world as a result of where my energy was just beforehand of that coming into my awareness. One beautiful example is just the latest example, and this is just one of so many. And when I began to more consciously activate the mission that I call the journey of the creation pillar on this planet, and once I made this beautiful documentary, a movie of the Alps, and with the background of Spirit speaking about what the creation pillar essence is and how it moves, what it seeds on this planet, especially at this particular time, and what the journey is like, although it's always an individual, very unique journey. So I've been noticing this trend, and it's been happening so many times. But as you know, it's the Spirit that gives you this knowing of your essence in spirit form. There's many people who can channel information for you and tell you bits and pieces of your purpose on earth, your earth link-ups, your ancestry, your lineages, your challenges, your initiations. But I believe it's only Spirit that tells you your spirit essence, your spirit forms essence in the way you contribute to the fabric of all life and creation. So for me, that is the giver of life, and I walk the mission of a creation pillar. So the example I am to give you is that my life force always moves into something. So Spirit will usually bring me something. It will start popping up things and symbols of a certain frequency. And for me this year, this whole summer and autumn, was guidance messages, the energy, the frequency of France. And it's always a particular region. And sometimes in the past, when I wasn't fully aligned with what that is, I misinterpreted. I thought I need to travel there or go there, and it spoke to me, and it was for a while, and then the energy slowly drifted away. It started slowly to dissolve, and it wasn't that intense anymore. So this year in particular, it was the energy of France. I kept seeing messages, France, Eiffel Tower, even French music. Everything was coming towards me. So when I bask in this energy, when I bathe in this energy moves into my field, and it creates a light quotient exchange, which moves into the frequency itself that we would call the energy of the country called France, or that region, whatever that region is. So Spirit uses physical triggers that align our life force with that, and sometimes the mind will misinterpret that. But for me, again, this energy was very intense through the summer and the fall. It was a few months, and then it again started to dissolve, and then it went away. And it wasn't just recently, of course. I was introduced, as you all probably are, with the recent dynamics of country France, and following countries as well, such as Belgium, Germany, now Netherlands as well, Sweden, I think, some of the more northern countries that are moving with this rebellion, against globalism. And what I'm shown is Spirit always tells me there are certain countries that as we have our bodies, as we're individuals that culminate the unique light quotient that makes us open up to higher and higher levels of our abilities, to open up to different realms of possibilities. And there's never just one. Like we know now, there's not just the possibility of us being here on earth and fighting for our survival and fighting for our rights. That's not the end of the journey. There's so many possibilities that expand once you awaken, and then you have to feel into through your heart what that is for you in each moment, whether that is you moving with a different frequency alignment, different dimensional spaces, being in this form on earth, but overlighted with the illumination of your light body, moving into the rain body, different ways of expression, physically ascending, which means having your light body create a synthesis with the physical body, which I believe a lot of volunteer souls are here to do. They're kind of like making love with this physical realm, but through a higher presence. So they're never fully quite in what we call the 3D, this realm of density. So like we do, we have that, and we establish that through our journeys of life force mastery. and awakening to higher channels of possibility, how we harness light and how we emanate light. It's the same true for different regions of the planet, and there's regions of the planet that have higher light quotient capacity, and this is where we're usually noticing extreme emanations of energy, outbursts, now in the interpretation of what we call the physical facets of that. We call things like people are protesting, people are rebelling, people are going against the system, and as well where we are, that's not truly the path of highest alignment, because you've probably heard it before that the way to operate within the system through rebellion and trying to push through it, push against it, it just knocks you back down. But there's a lot of people who don't know that yet, and these aspects, they believe they need to fight for their rights, to not, be used anymore by these forces that seem to govern and operate everything, and they think they have the right to design everyone's life according to their needs, to feed their own interests. And these aspects of creation are playing out as well, these aspects that we don't believe we need to do anymore. We believe we need to align with our heart, and the highest form of rebellion is this inner peaceful energy of constant benevolent wholeness. It's not even a state of balance. We're constantly on the tipping point, right? Moving from left to right, but it's a higher state of balance. So recently we did a meditation when we were focusing on all these regions where a major overwhelm and awakening is now coming up, as well as through these intensities and challenging situations. And we were meditating, and Spirit was actually sharing with us that it's much more difficult to do what we do, to be fully benevolent and be aware of everything that's happening, not be in your bubble and not care and say, I don't care, that's not happening in my realm, my reality. Let those people deal with it. It's just their karma. It's not like that. You are completely aware of everything that's happening, and yet you're holding the position of pure benevolence, of pure divine neutrality with such immense unconditional love that you trust that every single facet of that life expression needs to go through the experience that they believe they still need, and you're just simply holding the position of higher light. And this is what creation pillars do. So they were showing me how much light quotient I've already gathered, and it's an immense journey of light that I've kind of left as a legacy of light. And as you know, probably, we can't leave a legacy of light on this planet if we are not in control of our own mastery, which means not through control, that's a lower sense of moderation of the self, but this deep presence, and to be aligned with that and know that. So recently as well, I had a session with a companion, and a lot of people who believe they need to give to the world, bring more love, share more love, do something on the outside, they forget to listen to that call that from within. It tells them this first needs to be given to you. So you cannot leave a legacy of light before you fully live it within you, that it's truly embodied. So people forget that. And the meditation, the visual they gave through that session was envisioning all the people and even the world at large, if you want to, how you believe you want light or love to move into the world, what you believe you must do, what's expected, in your life or expected from you to do. And simply ask yourself, what is the vision of this world that I have right now? What do I feel like in this world? And you will maybe, or perhaps you will have different answers, because each time, as you align with a different vibrational attunement of the world, you will feel differently. So at a certain point, you can even envision all these people or aspects that are just traits of you. These are aspects of our own selves. And you can envision them that they're all kind of holding hands, becoming one. And I saw people moving around the planet like in a donut shape or a toroidal field shape, and they're coming back to you. So the return of what you believe you need to give out or send out always comes back to you, so that you create this inner resonance where everything you give to yourself is already a highest gift of life to life itself, and it moves into wholeness of all. That's unity consciousness right there for you. It's so simple. So we also did, and I shared on my download page, an activation called Life Without Limitation. And it's simply you allowing yourself to be the facilitator for this higher consciousness, even with all that is happening, and even within all your judgments that you still hold about reality being a certain way. So Spirit is sharing that at this time it is vitally important, it's crucial for us to be patient with what's happening. not just to say, oh yes, this is happening and I believe this is wrong, or these people are fighting for the rights in the wrong way. It's too much oppression against oppression. It's just creating more duality, more separation. But these aspects also feel they need their rightful ownership in the world. They somehow evolve themselves through these expressions. That's how life evolves. There's soul aspects that play these aspects out, and that's why, like I've shared with you, we can see them as simply parallel realities. So when you come from the space of the inner light that's in your core, that can envelop all of life through love by simply being a radiant pillar of love, not necessarily needing to do something or participate with it, and that's also in the spirit channel message, to create the sacred space and move beyond the realm of the overwhelm, where we constantly need to be fed information to know what's going on and to feed our life force to it through duality. So when you infuse, not feed the life force into a situation, but infuse your highest aspect, the higher aspect of life force, which is pure spirit moving through you, it's going to come through that benevolent space. And like spirit has shared with us in a meditation, this is actually harder, much harder to do, and to hold this amount of stillness and such in such extreme duality playing out, than actually those who are there on the so-called battlefields and the protesting arenas and so on and so forth. But these aspects believe they need to do so. And before we do the transmission, because I have to share this with you, I was called to offer something of a higher nature than just speaking here with you through words. It's just an introduction to let you know what this is about. Spirit is asking us all to step into this higher space. So it asked me to ask you if you would feel called, and if you feel that invitation, that you would participate with me in this spirit transmission where we create this space together. So anytime you join, whenever you watch this, you're contributing to this vortex growing. This is a vortex of pure benevolence of life force that already knows where it wants to move into. And the reason why I shared my story, for example, with friends, how this came with me as a guidance, is so much of my life force went there. And it wasn't through duality. It was simply, as I always say to you, life force is a natural divine intelligence of pure spirit. So it always knows its highest expression. It always knows its highest potential, where it wants to move into, what it wants to be fed into through spirit, not your perception that's sometimes, many times, based on duality. And what we're fed through external information that is in many cases, as you know, falsely perpetuated into being and manipulated, distorted. So we have to really be present with what truly is. And the only way to do that is to enter this realm of pure spirit. So when I channel in any way, it's not channeling of entity. It's pure divine intelligence of illumined liquid light, of life force, that has the highest perspective that I can consider as a human being, as an individualized presence here on earth. That, when people always say, I see many times these channelers who channel 111 types of entities and beyond, and it's not really necessary. Spirit always tells me in the unity consciousness, the names we give to these beings, it's of our own making. In a unity field, it's all seen more like a sacred pool of light. So this is why I usually just say I move into expanded space of spirit when I'm in the presence of illumined light, and I channel from that space, from this expanded perspective. That's all how I see it. So I want to explain that I was called to offer this short transmission of light so that we can enter into together, and this is that higher space. So when I'm transmitting this, is me moving, actually I'm not transmitting it outside of me, I'm moving in my space of being in that, but like I said, it moves out and it comes back to you. This is the true enveloping of anything that you perceive a reality or an aspect of reality, or even the world at large, with this light of illumination. That light always comes from you and back to you because it knows its source. It is that simple. The truth knows its source. So in many cases, people believe, yeah, we are here to seek the infinite or the ultimate truth. But what Spirit has recently shared through that transmission is that we're not here to seek some sort of ultimate, which is a concept. It's still a construct. It's not something that's even real to us. But what is real to us is how we are in the sense of belonging, the beloved, the individual illumined presence in that field of the entirety of all, the source of all. So what we're really needing to align with and seek in a way, I don't usually use the word seek, but align with, is the truth of our illumined self, right? So the truth of our ultimate self, rather than the idea of the ultimate truth, is the truth of our ultimate self. So if you feel the difference when you vocalize those words, what it creates a space within you, and that space is an open space where your truth perception is not rigid or limited to an idea of what is the ultimate, because in many ways we can become like crazy obsessed fanatics when we have the idea of this ultimate, and my ultimate is right and yours is not, because you're an infant and I'm this wise being. But you can be in the presence of this deep wisdom when you enter the sacred space. So this is what I wanted to share with you. And before going to the transmission, I want to read you again a short paragraphs from the Jesuit Channeling's book. I like this book a lot. And I want to read this important part of how this awakening now truly is taking place, okay? Today we share our energies and join to channel a cosmic energy which is trying to find its way to Earth in this new era. The new era is no longer a vision of the future. It is already manifesting itself in the daily life of innumerable individuals. If you read the paper or watch the news, it may seem that the time is not ripe yet. But the awakening brought forward by the new era starts at the level of the individual. That is so important, at the level of me and you. Not at the level of governments, institutions, and organizations. It is in your own everyday existence that a new flow of energy presents itself. It is the flow of your heart that invites you and beckons you to live and to act according to its lightness and wisdom. This is how the birthing of the new era takes place, by ordinary individuals being attentive to the whispers of their heart. Spiritually, the foundation of any real change or transformation is always laid on the individual level. The energy which is awakened in your hearts will gradually find its way through institutions and organizations which still hold on to the old paradigm of ego-based consciousness. Old bulwarks of power will break down, not by violence, but by tender energy of the heart. If the heart takes over, the lead of the old will collapse, not under the pressure of power and violence, but under the pressure of love. It also speaks about the idea that we have through spiritual anger. This is how it is presented through this concept. We always believe that the world needs to be this and that way. So we have this idea or a vision of the ideal. And people who call themselves light workers always say, well, this is how the world is supposed to be. This is my vision of the new earth, or the word, your sacred word that is your holy self. But in many cases, still there's a counteractive notion within us that believes it needs to be that way. And we can surrender this control instead of accepting things as they are right now, because there's facets that are evolving into that, and they're not as awake that you perhaps might consider yourself to be. So there's this great art of surrendering into what is and allowing. So I've shared with you that there's also an activation there on my page called The Art of Allowing. And all of these, this is the month of that. Remember the first Ascension update. This is the month about the art of allowing. How do we allow ourselves to feel that joy and celebration for life? Like today is sun, right? Even when the conditions are not right. One example is when we constantly affirm, oh, this reality is so bombarded, right? There's now such a high amount of aerosols in the air that they don't always need to chemtrail spray every day, because there's already this high concentration of these heavy toxins, heavy metals in the air, in the atmosphere. So the weather is already manufactured without it needing to constantly be, added to it, because the amount is so huge. Yet we contribute with our light by knowing that even though the circumstances, the situations are such and such, this is not an excuse for us to not participate with life at this larger, expanded way, this illumined sense of reality. Our responsibility to actually not just to work in the light or be with the light, but our responsibility with joy. We have forgotten about this. So we're going to do this transmission now. I'm going to move into that state, and I hope it will assist yourself to feel that within you. This is not me giving anything to you. This is a false notion, an expectation, or a belief that something comes outside of us. But when I move into that space, like I said, it comes back to me, but it also permeates through the entirety of the whole. And this is how unity consciousness is not a construct, it's not an idea, but it's a literal experience once we're able to move ourselves into that space and be aligned and not always just fall prey to what we're being fed by the news, whether it's a globalistic news, whether it's news of the individuals who are trying hard to get things out into the public, into the mainstream in their own way. It is still news. It's still a reality coming from their perspective. But for you to be able to be in the perspective of life force, which can be all encompassing, it's not something we can do with words and awareness only. It's something that the transmission of spirit does through us when we allow ourselves to be in that space. So this is why I wanted to offer this, and I feel I will be working more on that level with times to come, because this is the expanded way. So I'm so excited. It was finally a bit sunny here today. Not from start. We had clouds that were not natural ones, of course. But then the sun broke through, and I just used it as an excuse to be here outside recording, even though there's cold, but it's not as bad. So yes. Are you ready? Okay. You just have to know I'm sitting on a wooden board, so I might not be fully comfortable. This is the best I could find. I can't sit in a lotus position because it's a wooden board and the grass and lots of dirt and some snow here underneath. So I'm just going to be like this. And anytime you join, you are actually contributing to this pool of pure benevolence growing and expanding on earth in human physical form, not just the aspects that we call our helpers or assistants, our angelics, the star brothers, sisters, you name it, right? And many times people are constantly asking for help, and I've shared with you before in my own experience how the guidance from my own Illumined Council suddenly didn't feel always that available. And the reason for that is that they're dealing with a lot of heaviness, a lot of oppression from a higher perspective as well. They also need to be very present with what's happening so that things can be constantly mitigated from this higher perspective. So they're not always tending to our personal needs, right? So we like I've shared before, we need to know what essence to invoke. If you don't know, go back and watch that video, what essences to invoke, so that we're always served. But it's not always the way we want to, because there's such huge things and matters at stake at this time that we have to simply move into the energy of trust that every part of creation already naturally knows its place. It knows what it's doing. It knows where life force, as this pure divine intelligence of spirit, knows how to move, when to move, what to expand. It's all just so beautifully designed. And in this transmission, let us move into that feeling, let us move into that space, and let that be a shared space of unity, of course. So let us begin. So, dear beloved, I hope you enjoy this transmission. And Spirit wants, it desires each and every one of us to feel our natural state of grace, of our illumined presence. It wants us to rejoice regardless of anything, to celebrate life, to be the very essence of life, to be life itself, and our own unique nature and design. And to remember that we are a gift, each and every one of us, in the way we participate with life in this conscious, purely benevolent way of pure being. That we can always self-regulate, self-modulate when it feels like we've moved too much into the world of overwhelm, and return back to the world of inner spirit, of the inner core, the inner creation that is an essence of such high potency of life force that naturally blossoms itself. So in this activation recently, Spirit showed how a rose does not blossom in a linear way, but it's like all petals simply remembering. And Rose says, I'm a rose. And as it remembers, it naturally opens up. It remembers its divine state, its origin, its purpose in this realm, and its sacredness in that process of opening up. So this is our journey. This is our path. I hope you enjoy the transmission. I'm sort of lost for words right now. I would just sit in the space for a little while longer. I invite you to do the same in your own sacred space. And remember, anytime you feel you've moved too much into the external conditions that sometimes bring up either anger, resistance to what's taking place, frustration, fear, depression, even melancholy, just call yourself back with the breath into this space. Remember that space of purity, of benevolence, of your divine state of grace. And just sit with that for a while. And as you are sitting in that, you're not sitting there alone. I'm sure you're aware of that. The higher you can feel this vibrational attunement within yourself, the more attuned you will feel with all life. So that's the gift you give to yourself and to all. And it's so precious. It's so valuable in ways we can't always imagine here in this form. So we must transcend the idea that we have about the meaning of this form so we can reach the levels of the beyond. Enjoy, and so much love, wisdom, and power as always. Take care.